Welcome back to Today's Verdict. I'm your host, David Lesh. We are always encouraging you to stay connected, so tweet us at Today's Verdict. Discovery is a pre-trial process that occurs during a lawsuit. Basically, it allows a party to access evidence from other evidence and making sure to decide what is good for your trial and what is not good for your trial. The problem is, when can you get the evidence? And right now, here to help us discuss and whether or not we're going to make some progress is Vinoo Varghese. Hi, Vinoo. How are you?
Good, David. How are you?
All right. Well, from what I understand, and I am not a criminal attorney, and we had somebody on set earlier, getting the evidence that you need to help you as a defendant is not as easy as you would think. Am I correct?
Correct.
Presently, if I've been arrested, what is the procedure for me to get all the evidence I need to help build a defense?
It depends, in some extent, on which county you get arrested in, right? So here in the Bronx, there is some form of open file discovery. So what that means for the viewer is that your lawyer is not going to get everything. So the most important stuff for a defense attorney to be able to analyze is witness statements, right? Because under the law, as it is, the government has to turn over hard evidence. So they have to turn over videotapes. If there's, you're caught doing whatever on video, they're supposed to turn that over pretty quickly, fairly quickly, once requested.
Which, by the way, I hear doesn't happen so often.
Right.
It could take 30, 60, 90 days, and by the time it comes, you've already copped your plea, but we'll get into that, right?
Yes.
Am I correct, though? Sometimes you don't even get the hard evidence.
That's correct, and there's a really sad story out here in the Bronx. There's a guy named Aaron Cedrus who was chronicled in the New York Times several months back, because in that case, he was a bouncer outside a club here in the Bronx who was charged with being involved in a gang assault. Guy had no record.
Yeah, I think I've read about this. This is the gentleman who was really just breaking up a fight.
Correct.
And the video would have actually exonerated him, but by the time it got turned over, he spent time in prison. His whole life just kind of fell apart, and he did nothing wrong. Had they turned over this evidence, it would have been
that's
a whole different life.
That's correct. And in fact, that's the problem here, right? The prosecutors here, in this case in the Bronx, it happens in the other counties, they didn't look at this carefully. They didn't look at it closely. And I'm not sure if it was necessarily malicious as it was laziness. I want to use a stronger word, laziness. And this poor guy had to suffer.
Now, let's play devil's advocate for a second, if I may.
Sure.
The reason why I guess the prosecutors do not want to turn over this evidence, you witnesses, etc., is that they're afraid that you, the accused, will contact the witnesses through various means, and we know social media is so prevalent, Facebook, Twitter, whatever, to shame you into not testifying. And now the prosecutor doesn't have anybody to testify against you. What do you say to that?
That doesn't happen.
Doesn't happen.
Can it happen? Sure. But, the Brooklyn district attorney, for example, Eric Gonzalez, he has gone on record and saying that most acts of violence, that's really at the heart of the concern, is witness safety, witness intimidation, occur with people that already know each other. So they already know who the person is that went to the police. In most other cases, that's not going to be the issue. And it's certainly not an issue when you're dealing with white-collar crime, when you're dealing with people in financial cases. And as a defense lawyer, I have a right to contact those witnesses. I've got a right to speak to them. I've got a right to have my investigator talk to them, or else I'm not doing my job.
So then why? Why do they not want to turn that over? Certainly in the civil field, which I'm in, you get this very quickly. What is their argument?
David, that's actually, you just hit it on the head. And it's in the civil world, when money's at stake, you get everything. And you don't go to trial, there are no surprises before you'll know what the other side has, get depositions. On the criminal side, you don't get that. Why? What this is all about? Conviction rates.
Please.
They want to keep the conviction rates high, and that's not what a prosecutor's supposed to be doing.
Now, from what I understand, and I've been reading a little bit about this, is that sometimes the defendants say, you know what, I'd rather just get the criminal, part past me. I'll start the time. I'll get it done. I'll be home in a year or two, and I've had it. Even though I didn't really do anything, or I could probably beat this. I don't want to sit in Rikers for another 6 months or whatever the issue is.
Right.
Is that something that you see happens more often than not?
It absolutely happens to people who are looking at this from a cost-benefit analysis. Okay, you know what? I'm in jail. This is what I'm looking at. They're giving me an offer where I could be out in 6 months or whatever. and people plea. As a defense lawyer, we have an ethical obligation to make sure that no client is perjuring himself, so that they're out there and you know that they're actually swearing to something they did. But the reality is, particularly with public defenders and the mass majority of people that do that, it's turnstile justice.
Now, you seem to be suggesting there's an inconsistency among counties. Why is that? We have tougher prosecutors in one county, we have more crime, and in one county, why the discrepancy? I don't understand.
Yeah, all of the counties, with the exception of Manhattan, have some form of open file discovery. Brooklyn has the most liberal. It was the first, my former boss, I was an assistant district attorney in Brooklyn, my former boss, Charles Hines, was the first one to institute that. The other counties, with the exception of Manhattan, follow that procedure.
Why Manhattan?
It's again, got to keep the conviction rates high, right? To me, you're not dealing with people that are at equal length. Now, some prosecutors, individual prosecutors in Manhattan will be more, they'll turn it over. But it should be a policy, and Governor Cuomo is actually trying to enact new policy that would make prosecutors turn over things within 15 days.
Now, where are we in terms of a bill or a law changing this whole discovery process?
Governor Cuomo has said, and he wrote an editorial in the New York Times last week saying that he's going to submit a bill that's going to require prosecutors turn over discovery in most cases, but it's also giving a prosecutor out. Discovery, meaning not the hard evidence like a video, that's already required as long as the defense attorney makes the request, but the witness statements. But they're giving an out, which is the redaction out that says, well, if we think somebody's going to be, threatened.
So half it's going to be redacted is really what you're saying.
That's correct.
So what do? You bring an in-camera inspection, you go through it, and
that's the suggestion. The New York State Defenders Association and people like that are actually trying to brush back against that.
And just for the viewers, we understand redaction means that they exit out, so you can't really see what's there.
Right.
And then in-camera means the judge has to actually allow them to white it to allow you to see what was been blacked out. So these takes time.
It does.
And somebody may plead out because they just don't want to deal with it.
Well, Governor Cuomo has also proposed eliminating cash bail for misdemeanors and nonviolent felonies. So this is a step in the right direction.
So we're moving in the right way. I don't know if you could really give us tips here because it's not really a tip kind of segment, but if somebody is watching it right now and they've been arrested and they have an attorney, but they don't think they're getting the names of the people that can, somehow get them off the hook, what would you tell someone who's watching right now? What could they do?
What they should do is make sure that they review everything. So
before they plead.
Correct.
All right.
Absolutely. So when the attorney gets it, that the attorney sit down with you and tell you, okay, this is what the government has turned over. This is what they're supposed to turn over, and this is what's missing.
Gotcha.
And the more interaction you have with a client, the better the attorney's going to be.
All right. Where do we find you?
My office is at 2 Wall Street down in the Financial District. Our website is vargheselaw.com, V-A-R-G-H. Oh,
awesome.
Perfect.
Right.
vargheselaw.com.
All right, and you'll come back maybe 6 months. We'll see how this is faring out and whether or not we're finally getting some justice.
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank our guests for joining us and, of course, you, the viewers, for watching. If you missed any part of today's show, be sure to check it out at www.tv. Also, remember, if there's a legal issue or topic you'd like to see on a future edition of Today's Verdict, feel free to contact me at davidlesh@BronxNet.org or tweet us at Today's Verdict and make sure to hashtag Today's Verdict. For myself and all of us at Today's Verdict, always remember, know your rights, know your issues, reach a verdict. I'll see you next time.